You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're having our own special Veterans Day episode for ourselves. And let's see. And what we're basically going to do is we're going to go through our various ways of ingestions. We are basically trying to use this as an educational tour to kind of, give you an understanding about each one of us have become patients in one way, shape, or form. And as patients, there's really no guide for congratulations, you now have to use medical cannabis. So each one of us has found our own way and our own methods. And we kind of wanted to go through with you as an educational what it is that we use and how we use it. We've had to go through our own learning experiences, myself, 30 plus years of this. And I've also been fortunate to work inside of a head shop, one of the largest head shops in the United States. It was the Galaxy Gallery in Los Angeles, California, back in the 90s. So I've had an understanding of the different ways of ingestion and the different modalities for the basic realities that I had to understand what people were buying and using, etc. So this is gonna kind of, hopefully, if you're a new user, this will give you a guide of some of the different ways and save you a little bit of time in the learning process. Needless to say, it's its own set of challenges, but we've navigated these waters. So we kind of wanted to start off with, we'll start off very simply. We're going to start off with George Armstrong, and he's going to give us an understanding of, he's going to do a joint, and he's going to do a pre-roll joint out of a cone for us. So he's going to explain the process as he goes through it, and I'm going to switch to speaker view at this time. And hey, George, how you doing there in Pennsylvania? Happy Veterans Day to you and all of our members here today. And I would like to start off with George. So let's see that joint and get it going. Show us your grinder, sir.
Yeah. So let's, first of all, exactly what I wanted to start with is to thank all the council members, the ones that are here and the ones that aren't able to join us, for their sacrifices that they made. It's not always an easy day, and I definitely appreciate you guys. So I am going to do a cone. I want to start off actually by saying I'm not going to keep it simple. I never do. So I'm going to start off by saying that I found that different ways of using cannabis. I use it almost every way throughout the day for different purposes. So I eat a small bit of cannabis in the morning. That helps me with a bunch of stuff, but I eat a small dose at the start of my day. I generally use a pain cream on hard days. Also really good for skin conditions, which I have psoriasis. So cannabis creams have been better than anything I've gotten from a doctor for my psoriasis. So I also use that. I dab mostly when I just need to release. So really, honestly, when I just need to get really high really quickly, when I'm in a bad spot, kind of like something to put out a fire, is generally the way I use that. But my favorite way to consume cannabis is by far the way I've always consumed it is combustion. So that could be out of a bowl or out of a joint, or in this case, out of a pre-made cone. So to get us started, I already packed up my grinder here with some very nice apple cobbler from the Pennsylvania program. You need to break it up. Break it up so it fits in your grinder. Then you want to grind it. Obviously, you don't want to just break it up with your fingers to roll a joint or make a cone. It's going to be chunky. It's not going to burn consistently. And if I can say one thing about the importance of a joint or a cone, it needs to have the consistent amount throughout the whole cone. It can't be really tight at the end or really loose down on the end where the filter is. And really, that's about it. It's the most basic way to use your cannabis. So I think it's by far the most popular way that people use. So what I do is I grind out my cannabis.
Now that's a raw cone is what he has. So this is a company that makes these. They're pre-rolled cones, and they have a filter, which is a folded cardboard, which keeps your mouth from the cannabis. So it acts as a filter in a certain resolve.
Right. So I'm going to put my camera down here so you can see. I've ground up my cannabis and I put it in a folded card. That's just going to make the process easier. When you get your raw cones, they all come with a stuffer. I have a wooden one here, but this one comes with one stuffer for each of the three. And all natural hemp papers also Raw has, by the way, so I would suggest going that way. So now we're just going to start filling the cone. What you want to do is just put it in there loosely. Fill it up maybe halfway, just really loose like that. Then you're going to do your first one. You don't want to pack it down in there. You just want it to be tight up against the thing. That's really important. Then you'll kind of get the feel. You don't want it to be really hard or have any air bubbles. And then you repeat that process. And as you'll see, it'll probably take 3 or 4 times. Each time you can put some in there very loosely. Like I said, just let it fall with gravity. One quick stuff to make sure it's a consistent through that level of it. Back to your pile of cannabis. You'll notice that I'm not grabbing the paper and really pushing it down. If you make it too tight, the joint will keep going out. So it needs to be a steady amount up through the whole thing, and you'll get a nice consistent burn throughout your cone. So I can feel I'm a little soft towards the bottom, so I'm going to do a little better of a pack. And then when I get towards the top, I want to make sure that I'm consistent all the way through. One more at the top. And then on the last one, then the way I like to tighten up to get the right consistency, make sure I have the right consistency, twist the top. When you feel all the cannabis has moved down to the bottom, you're just about right. And that's my 1/2 gram joint that I roll in that amount of time. So, like I said, this is probably the most common way that people use it, cannabis. is by combustion. So I'm not a great roller. I don't have any papers now, so that's why I always choose the cones, I think. And plus there's no waste. I can smoke these almost down to that cardboard filter and then put them out. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how I roll a cone. And then the only thing then to do is to smoke it. So I'll send it back to you, ATN.
Job. Now that's a joint, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you, George, for providing that. I'm going to try and check in with our brother Al Byrne. Can you hear us, Al?
I can.
Yeah.
My computer. Yeah, thank you for being patient.
Okay, so let me start.
It's all my fault.
It's okay. We got you here. We were going to open with Al. Al is, of course, one of our senior members and one of our greatest guides, and also one of the leaders who has been out doing medical cannabis for 40 plus years. Thank you for your work and your guidance. So Al has a lot of experience and he wants to share that with you. And one of them is about his pipe and how he smokes. And then he wants to also talk about Donald Tashkin and his study, because this is a great deal of knowledge that we all need. So thank you very much, Al Byrne, for being the leader that you are. Happy Veterans Day. And show us what you got.
Thanks, Etienne. Well, I'm not leaving. I'm getting my props. Before we get to the pipe, we got to get to the can. You see, this is a one of them little cans, got pineapple juice in it. When I travel overseas, I used to take V.A.C juice in a 6-pack because it looks harmless, and I like V.A.C juice. Right now I got a pineapple can. So here's the deal. When you go overseas or you're stuck somewhere in a motel and you don't have a pipe but you got a bud, all you need is a can and a sharp instrument like a knife. So the first thing you do, of course, with the can is you remove the pop top thing, right? You get rid of this thing. Get that out of your way. And then I'm going to use a bigger prop because it's easier to show you. This is a soda can, but it's all the same. You get rid of the little thing. And now the only clue here is you've got an up and a down here. You've got an open hole and up here is solid. So what you want to do here is you want to make sure the holes on. Just put a little indentation on the top of the can, just a little one. Doesn't take much. Just a little one. Whoops, I'm losing something here. And then you get something sharp like a knife, and you just put a couple of little holes in the thing. Don't overdo it. Just a few holes. Then you take your bud and you put your bud here, right at the top of the holes. And you take your
you have to bring it up to the camera. Bring it up to the camera, Al.
Yeah, where's the camera? There's a friggin' camera here. All right. So you got the bud on the top of the can. See, it's just a little indentation. It's got some holes on it. And then you light it. Okay. Then you light the bud. You inhale through the can, and you've got yourself a ready-made pipe. So that's how you do it when you got nothing. Now, what we do have here, though, and what Etienne has asked me to talk about is a regular pipe. See, it's got a bud in it. And while people call this glass, it's really Pyrex. And here's the story. Back in the year 2000, Patients at a Time held its first medical cannabis conference in the history of the world. And one of the attendees was a doctor, a medical doctor, Donald Tashkin, Tashkin, and he at the time was the head of the pulmonary department of the University of California in Los Angeles, and he was also a professor of medicine at the same school. And the United States government, namely NIDA, the National Institute for Drug Abuse, hired him to do a pulmonary study of thousands and thousands of patients over a long period of time, because they were convinced that he would find that smoking cannabis over a long period of time would be a bad thing, cancer-inducing or some sort of bad anyway. So they started him on this project. Gosh, I don't know, but it way before 2000, maybe 15 years, maybe in the 80s. I really don't know. But anyway, he showed up. I asked him to come. He came to the conference, and he really intrigued the people there, including me. He said, "Listen, I'm doing this study, and it's not going to be done for 8 years, but it's really interesting. It's really interesting," or something like that. It's kind of intriguing. So when it was over in 2008, I invited him back to the conference we had in California, and he made the announcement. And here's the announcement: that after studying some 30,000 people, that's a lot of people, for about 20 some years, almost 30 years, he had divided up these people into these subjects, if you will, into 4 categories. People that smoked absolutely nothing at all for this period of time, people that smoked cigarettes, cigars, people that smoked cigarettes, cigars, and cannabis, and people that smoked only cannabis. Now, smoked, we're not talking ingestion here, smoke, just like George had that joint, mainly that kind of intake at that time in history. Here's what he found out and what he announced to us in 2008. 2008. He said that if you smoked cigarettes and cigars, et cetera, you were going to get cancer or COPD about what the federal government says you were going to get it. He agreed with them. He said that if you smoked cigarettes, cigars, and cannabis, didn't make any difference. You were going to get COPD or cancer just like the government said you would. However, this was the biggie. If you smoked cannabis, you were going to get nothing bad. He did not have one single research client come down with any sort of lung cancer or COPD in all those years. And in fact, they did better than people that smoked nothing at all. So this whole nonsense about smoking is bad for you is nonsense. Dr. Tashkin proved it. Of course, NIDA didn't wasn't happy, so you don't hear about it much. That's why you need guys like me. So then I had a private conversation, a lot of them actually, with Dr. Tashkin, a really nice man. And right away, he asked me, he said, "How do you use your cannabis? How do you smoke it?" And I said, "Well, I generally use a joint." And he said, "I wish you wouldn't. Because you're smoking paper, you're smoking all kinds of things you don't need to smoke." I said, "What do you want me to use?" He said, "I want you to use a pipe. And what I want you to do with that pipe is use it all day long, Friday, today. And then tomorrow morning, when I start my cannabis in the morning wake and bake, I get a fresh one, a clean one. And the one I use tonight will go in a cleaning solution and it will sit there for 24 hours. And then the one I use on Saturday will be replaced by another one on Sunday. And there'll be a routine where 3 pipes will go through my life every week, every day. And they'll all be clean when I get up in the morning to use my wake and bake." And Dr. Tashkin assured me that this is not folly, that even if you're inhaling your own bacteria, it can cause you pulmonary distress. Now, this guy's the head of the pulmonary department. I pay attention to him, and he was in that capacity for decades. So what he said to do, let me repeat: use a pipe and clean it every day and start every day with a new pipe. Dry one out, put it in reserve, start again in the morning. And another bit of wisdom, another one of the guys that we worked with a long time is a doctor from Canada, works at McGill University. His name is Mark Ware, W-A-R-E. And Mark is excellent guitarist, by the way. But he did a study for Canada, for Health Canada, about how do you smoke it and what do you get out of it? I don't know. So what he looked at, he looked at 3 different ways to smoke cannabis: as a joint, as as a bong or as a bowl. So if basically what he came down with is if you smoke cannabis as a joint, you're going to get about 10, maybe 12% of the usable cannabis will actually be used as a medicine. If you use a bong, the number rises significantly. It gets up to about 55 or 60%. Although Dr. Tashkin would tell you, if you're going to use a bong, you've got to clean that every day. And Dr. Ware went on to say, however, if you use one of these pipes, like I just showed you, the usage level is above 80%. So when you take these two studies, these two doctors have done, and you put them together, what you want to do is you want to smoke using a pipe. You definitely want to smoke it. You want to use it as a pipe, but you want it to be a clean pipe. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Al. Great job. And yes, yours truly has used that can situation in a pinch. Now, of course, we have come to learn that we shouldn't smoke through aluminum. And of course, most of the cans are aluminum. So again, it's an emergency in a pinch. You shouldn't be using this on a regular. You want to use something such as early on when I was on the streets, I would use this. And so this is a small pipe that looks just like a cigarette. I learned to hold it just like a cigarette, smoke it like a cigarette, and treat it like a cigarette. But of course, I don't use these anymore because I also come to learn these are made from aluminum, even though it's coated with ceramic on the outside. Not good. You want to smoke through stainless steel or preferably something like this. This is titanium. And I got this from Etsy. So there are manufacturers all over that can make custom pipes. The key thing about titanium, especially grade 1, grade 2, is that it is a stable metal, i.e. by using flame and higher flames on it, you will not cause off-gassing or chemical breakdown. So again, just want to make people aware of that. And another thing I wanted to point out is for your smoking, and if you're traveling, there are these filters. They're called Smoke Buddies. This is one particular brand. This is a large one. This is a smaller, more handheld for using a vaporizer pens, like 510 cartridges that screw together, etc. The one I like the best is this new one I found. It's called a Smoke Trap. And just to give you an idea, so this is, you're supposed to wrap your mouth around this thing, which needless to say is a little bit of a challenge after a big inhale. Whereas something like this has a rubberized cap, but it has the filter is on the inside. And the cool thing about this is when I'm done, this pops out and this filter is recyclable. So it's a HEPA filter and a charcoal filter, and it's recyclable. This thing's good for about 500 to 1,000 hits through it before it starts to leak through. So what this is a smoke filter. If you're in a sensitive area, a hotel room, or a vehicle pulled over, not driving, you use something like this, your car won't smell. The other thing is to use a spray like Ozium. Ozium is available at any trucks and every truck stop. We were taught this by people when we're on rock and roll tours. If they were in the back of the bus smoking and they got pulled over, basically they would spray this one spray of Ozium, which is basically a glycol spray, which it grabs everything in the air, it attaches to it and pulls it to the ground. So basically it drops the smoke very quickly. So your room doesn't smell like smoke or pot. And so by the time the police would enter the bus and come to the back of the bus wouldn't smell like weed. So again, you shouldn't use Ozium with people. You should not be inhaling it. It's something that you do and walk away from the room. Another thing I will make people aware of is this thing, if you're going to go to events, this is a thing called a mouthpiece, P-E-A-C-E. And this has a little lanyard hookup. And what this is it's made specifically for you to butt up right up against the bong, which is a water pipe here, so that your mouth is against this. This inserts in. So it's just very simple for you to use, and then inhale so that you can go around without spreading germs. Because as we know, people like to smoke on work sites, and if they smoke all together, they get sick and you lose your whole crew that way. So if everybody has their own mouthpiece and are keeping, people and separation of church and state, again, these are just ways and little things that I have learned as tricks. So that's just my little abutment as I take it over to Michael Crowitz, who's going to carry on with Al's story and then also talk to us about the challenges of accessing your cannabis in an area where you have inconsistent supply. He's also going to talk about the science from the bong study and also talk about Jack Herrera's 10-point scale and some other stories. Councilmember Michael Crowitz, regale us with your story, sir.
It is amazing how much I've come to want to say in this segment of our roundtable. I really wasn't anticipating that this is something that sort of crept up on me, but there's a lot of really interesting stuff embedded in the background. And Al has inspired me to tell you a little bit more about Dr. Tashkin. Not only do I love telling a story, but I think this is a really important point, especially Dr. Tashkin's early assumptions and how they were used by the government. But anyway, let me go ahead and tell you the story. I actually met up with Dr. Tashkin, the renowned pulmonary expert, at one of Dr. Nahas's conference, actually Dr. Nahas's big cannabis conference that he did at New York University. He was doing that.
Gabriel Nahas, just so people are aware.
Yeah, Professor Emeritus, New York University, the go-to guy for cannabis prohibition for several very mean-spirited presidential administrations, mean-spirited to cannabis, that is. And Dr. Tashkin, he was very interesting to me. I found his research very interesting and him personally very interesting. But anyway, he said to me that he was comparing unfiltered marijuana cigarettes with this taken with the style of how he saw people ingesting marijuana at the time. He even imitated this little professor imitating a pot smoker, taking a big hit, holding, going he's like, oh, it's so terrible, and that forcing it in your lungs like that, and an unfiltered cigarette. So he came up with just a hypothesis. And again, this is a 30-year study, as I was talking about. And this is, 30 years ago, he came up with this hypothesis that if you did smoke pot that way, compared to a cigarette, which was filtered and regulated and all that, he opined that it could be as much as 3 times worse to your lungs as smoking a cigarette. And police ran with this number. I mean, you've seen that number 100 times in 100 different ways. I think the most exaggerated I ever saw was the RCMP in Canada. I think they said 86 times worse on your lungs or something. But anyway, what he found, as Al talked about, was almost the exact opposite of his hypothesis. In fact, from his research findings, if someone smoked pot and tobacco, they did slightly better than if they just smoked tobacco by itself. So it really didn't work out quite the way he had anticipated. But the other thing I wanted to say that was really interesting was when he came to the conference, he spoke, and the first time he showed up, he was very trepidatious. He was even like notably nervous to get in front of this crowd because the federal government had been, championing ostensibly his research as the reasoning why they would keep marijuana illegal. I mean, it was this whole 3-to-1 thing was really run with. I mean, the government got a lot of mileage out of that. And being sort of the darling of the government and the government's prohibition, he was actually concerned about coming and speaking at our event. And I have to say, being there witnessing, being right next to him, he was very surprised at the warm reception that he was given. He laid out his research and what his preliminary findings were. And he just answered some questions, based on what he knew at the time, and went on. And when he came back after he had released his research, then it was different because he had already felt welcome with us, even when he thought, we were mad at him. But the government really turned its back on him when he came out with his research. So he came back as an old friend and somebody that the government had screwed. Well, anyway, join the club. But I thought I would tell you guys that background story, the behind the scenes story. But I feel like before I even talk about.
If I may interrupt, Mike, let me interrupt. You brought up a good point on the inhaling and holding your breath point. I'm glad you brought that up. Tashkent also told me that to hold your breath with an intake of cannabis like Mike is taking on right now, more than 2 or 3 seconds is not a good thing to do. He said, take your inhalation, accept it into your lungs, and exhale. He thought that holding your breath more than 3 seconds with that cannabis smoke in there was actually a negative.
Yes, they found that it was approximately, you get 90% of your ingestion on the initial inhale. So that holding in that other 10% is a waste. It's just like smoking a cigarette. Inhale, exhale. A lot of old heads inhale and hold it, and what you're getting more of is oxygen deprivation than you're actually getting. I mean, yeah, you're maybe getting another 2% more, but it's not negligible to what the initial inhale is, just for continuing the science. Michael Krawitz, continue. Thank you as well, Al.
Yeah, so before I go on, I wanted to take a sort of a science break, actually, and just kind of review a little bit of the science that I know of. There may be other science that I haven't read or been caught up on, but a couple of the key findings that we base our work on in the cannabis movement. One of them is what we'll call the Bong study. And that was put on by California Normal, Daryl Geringer and those guys. And they called it the Bong study, kind of shorthand, but they called it the Bong study for good reason, because they honestly thought that the Bong was going to fare better than the joint or the bowl or whatever. And the findings of that were quite interesting and counterintuitive to what we would hypothesized ourselves in the movement about what the study would show. And I think it turned out that the joint was the most efficient, and a pipe was very, very close behind, and then the bong was the worst. Bong actually came up the worst in the comparison study as far as transferring the cannabinoids from the bowl into your lungs without excess materials that you don't need. It seemed to fare the worst. So that's an interesting note. And then I know there's other studies that did vaporization studies where they found much more effective transfer of cannabinoids again into the lungs, into the bloodstream from vaporization over smoking. But I'll have to just throw a caveat in there that when you smoke, when you light cannabis on fire, you create a chemical equation. I mean, that's what fire really is, a pyrolysis, I think they call it. And that actually has its own outcomes and its own good and, well, mostly bad, I'd say probably, but good as well, and makes making the comparisons a little bit difficult. So you can't not count that. You have to take that into consideration. But history, to throw history in, the vast number of cannabis products that were in the pharmacy shelves back in the 1930 were not to be smoked. There was actually cigarettes. There were asthma cigarettes, ironically enough, that you would smoke maybe with a pinch of belladonna, take a couple of drags, and it would completely eliminate your asthma attack. I think 1890s, 1920 inhaler in the form of a joint. But the vast majority of the ways that people use, especially recreationally, so-called recreationally or culturally, was through edibles. I'm a bad case for that. I really have never been able to tolerate edibles very well, so I smoke, and that gets me to what Etienne introduced. My topic for tonight is, how do you take a variable supply and get a stable dose? And the reason why that came up, the Institute of Medicine, National Academies of Science Institute of Medicine, back in 1999, did a big review of patient information and studies, came to a determination that cannabis was a medicine, that it should be made available to patients. They felt like there was a lot of promise for pharmaceuticals, and they leaned heavily on that. That's what the drug warriors quoted mostly, but they also said that cannabis was an effective medicine. And I thought, a lot of discussion and angst from the opposition, especially of cannabis, has always been around dose. So I would speak to that. And it really is kind of something that if you extrapolate it from other substances, from other medicines, where dose is so incredibly important. If you take too much fentanyl, you'll die, on the spot. Taking too much cannabis, taking too much, an overdose of cannabis. First of all, the cannabis itself it doesn't have a very good chance of killing you. I think Dr. Grinspoon estimated that you'd have to take about 15,000 doses within a very few minutes to actually be a candidate for an LD, a death situation from cannabis. But besides that, it just produces like an anxiety reaction. You definitely can be scared shitless, but nonetheless, you'll survive. But the thing is that dose is very difficult to reach. And if you are smoking it, it's incredibly difficult to reach. If you take a drag or two off of a pipe and don't feel the desired effects, you do it again. And it's not really any more difficult than that. And that's really how they dosed it back in the 1890s to 1920s as well. They said, take the basic dose, whatever they gave you as your basic dose, which I'm saying is a drag or two off the pipe with the stuff that we have today. And you give it a little bit of time, and if necessary, repeat until desired effect is reached. Honestly, the same exact language they used 100 plus years ago. So that's, I think, kind of debunking really the whole dose idea. But it's also true. It's also very important, that you can actually receive a consistent supply of cannabis, and that actually works. The question the IOM asked me, which I thought was fascinating, they said, well, you talked about how you didn't really feel you needed to use these antidepressants that the VA had prescribed you all those years ago. Does that still have the same effect today? And I thought about it for a second, and I said, thank goodness, yes. I get a lot of people that were suffering from psychiatric medical conditions thank me for that answer later, but it's very true. Cannabis works effectively. There seems to be a dose sort of cliff where if the cannabis is not good enough quality that you can't get sufficient, you can get maybe enough by ingestion, by smoking, to get an initial dose, but the second dose later in the day, you can't reach that. It's just, that's, I come to call hemp, unfortunately. We don't really get that quality of cannabis in dispensaries usually, but people that are out in the real world that are buying brickweed still somewhere know what I'm talking about. And it's unfortunate that you're having to smoke hemp these days. But anything that I would put at a kind of medicinal quality. And that brings me to Jack Herer. Jack Herer, he came up with a book back in the 1970s, the kind of stoner's guide, the 10-point scale of marijuana. I definitely encourage people to check it out and pull it out of the mothballs online, look at it, maybe consider buying a copy. But it's a fun 1970s book where he tried to give a 10-point scale, 1 through 10 of the best bud. And I did sort of the same thing when I was a kid, coming up in the 70s, looking at the fantastic cannabis. I had a lot of trouble with hemp, and finally threw hemp away by moving 0 to 1 on the 10-point scale. And 0 to 1 was hemp, and then 1 and on was not hemp. And that line, the determination for that was, if you smoke a joint, you're hanging out with your friends, and everybody's using that cannabis, and everybody's asking the same question, like to each other, did you feel anything? No, it didn't exceed 1. 1, you don't have to ask yourself or anyone else if it was effective to be 1. 4, you start getting very distinct, very repeatable, responses of hunger, of pain reduction, stuff like that. I would call that your medicinal line in the sand. And 7 or 8 is an interesting one because most people never cross it. But if you do, you'll consistently have some issues that you'll have to deal with the first or second time that you smoke cannabis of that quality. You're talking Hawaiian bud, some of the best bud that's ever been produced out of Northern California. Really nothing, I don't think, that could ever be grown indoors. Sorry, Holland, whatever. But you're talking about cannabis that produces what I call the scary bud effect. personally think maybe now, given the knowledge I have all these years later, that maybe a cannabinoid ratio that has a lot of delta 9 but very little CBD. But there's more to that story, and I'll just leave you with this. Okay, back in the day, the DEA sampled some of that cannabis from Hawaii, and they found it had about 11 or 12% THC. And you know what? I trust them, and I believe that that was actually true, because they didn't look at cannabinoid ratios. They didn't look at the loads of terpenes. Cannabis bud so pretty that you didn't want to break it to put it in a bag. Rainbow colors that looked like you airbrushed it on. Absolutely, some of the most beautiful cannabis on the planet Earth came out of Hawaii back then. And to smoke that is a completely different experience. And until you do, you'll never get from 8, 9, or 10 on my 10-point scale. Maybe Jack's, but not mine.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mike, for that great explanation and breakdown. Just to clarify, that was a piece of history when those studies were done, and there needs to be updated studies. I'm looking at you, researchers, because we're talking about flowers strictly. These studies were not done with concentrates, especially some of the more today's concentrates like that dabbing, rosin, etc., where water is used more to cool the vapor as opposed to filter it out. However, always, I agree, clean your pipe and change your water daily. That's the biggest problem. You don't want bacteria to build up, and it can overnight. So, always keep that in mind and clean your bong. But I'll talk more about that when I get to my segment. But now we're going to go over to Council Member Nate Landau, who will work on vaporizing flower. He has a flower vaporizer. He's going to explain how to maintain it along with cleaning it. And then he's going to give us a look into his edible world. So thank you, Council Member, for joining us. Happy Veterans Day, and can't wait to hear this.
First of all, thank you all for having me. This Veteran Day means a lot more now that I'm with you guys. And just a factoid for you, Etienne, the Gulf War veterans this year have surpassed Vietnam veterans as the largest veteran group out of all veterans. So it happened this year, and 11% of veterans are now women. I'm going to start with the vaporizer. So in the beginning of 2017, I went from combusting, and I will say that smoking a joint is still my favorite way, but I'm a long distance runner and I started feeling it affected me. So I got this Mighty, and it's very easy to use. You open it over here, take some bud. You want to pack it in lightly, not too much, so you can let the air come through really easily. You put this back on top, and then all you have to do is turn on this button. What I like about it is it's very controllable. There's different vapor points. So I start at about 140 degrees Celsius, so I can get the terpenes, because terpenes are very volatile. So kind of open it up, and this ball can handle about 3 sessions of it. So I start with low temperature, then I move to 170, where you kind of get a mixture of the terpenes and the cannabinoids, and then I go up to about 185 degrees Celsius to get the actual high. It's once you turn it on, when it gets to the desired temperature, it will vibrate, and all you have to do is pull, and then you shut it off. So very easy to use, not very complicated, but like every machine, just like your car or anything, taking care of it is really important. I've had this for over 6 years, and only now it's starting to slow down on me. So once you're done with it, you dump everything out, and it comes with this great brush, and then you want to brush everything off the screen. Once you do that, but I would say depending on how much you use it, but after 2 days of using it, you want to take the top apart and soak it all in alcohol for about half an hour, and then it'll come out. So maintaining it, making sure it's charged, the battery life on it is amazing. You can take it to a concert. It will last me, 3-4 hours in a concert. So that is vaporizing. Now, edibles, there are many ways to make edibles. I try to find the most easy to follow and cost effective. Most of these tools you'll already have in your house. So the first thing you want to do is decarb. You can use flour or bee buds. I use trim personally. I do 22 grams per stick of butter, and I put it in a bowl and cover with tinfoil and make holes in it. I decarb it for 45 minutes at 225 degrees Celsius. After that, I grind it up in a standard grinder that you mixer that you have in your house, so it's nice and pulverized. And then I put it in a crock pot. You should have this at home, or you can get this at Target for about $20. I keep it on low, and then I have it in the crock pot for an hour and 15 minutes. I stir it every 15 minutes to keep the consistency. And after that, I let it cool for 20 minutes, and then I put it in a French press. And so you can filter out all the plant material and just have the oil. And then you have that butter, and you can put it in any recipe. I personally make cookies out of it. The one problem with making it at home is you have no idea how strong they are. It can be 10 milligrams and it can be 100, and you're in for a surprise. I weigh my thing and I use the same trim of cannabis that I grow. So I have a range, but I always give a disclaimer. It's like 40 to 80. If you're not you don't have a high tolerance, eat at your own risk. I do make them for my girlfriend's grandmother, and I just use a quarter amount of the trim that I usually do. And she has a very low tolerance, and it really, she's never had a paranoid effect of all of that. So that's the simplest way I found out of different trial errors of how to make edibles, but there are many different ways, and no way is better than the other. This, I think, is the easiest to follow.
Well, thank you for that very concise breakdown and understanding for people about what they can expect. And that's great. I love the little crock pot. And there's different ways to cook it, as well as you can make anything from the savory to the sweet. So it's all dependent on your creativity, and as well as your dietary restrictions and needs. So you can make your own sugar-free, also gluten-free, etc. That's what a lot of the patients here in California did. The majority of the products on the shelves were made by patients for patients, because they figure if it worked for them, hey, it may work for other people. So share your recipes, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great thing to learn and to do. Next up, we will have.
And who knew that Nate? Who knew that Nate had his own blender and his own crock pot? No wonder you got a girlfriend.
He's domestic, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why. Learning the tricks of the trade. So thank you again, Tony. Pardon me. Thank you, Nate. And then we're going to go to Tony Landry in Louisiana. He's going to teach us about a water pipe, which is also known as a bong. When I was a kid, yeah, we had to go to I went to Pittsburgh and had to go into a t-shirt shop and wait till everybody was out and ask for a bong, and they would open up a special door, and in that door was a wall full of different water pipes for you to choose from. But that's how hidden it was back in the 80s. So that fortunately that's not the case anymore, and Tony is a legal patient in the state of Louisiana, and so his pipe is legal, and you can say water pipe and bong in his house. So Council Member Tony Landry, teach us what you got, sir.
Hey, happy Veterans Day to everyone. Great to be here with you. Yeah, the bong is I've seen them made with bamboo, like about big, and then they'll drill a hole in it and use a little stem, similar like this, little, but it's metal. It was a metal tube back in the day. But today's bongs are a little different. And just like all the other smoking devices, it's always important to make sure it's clean. You can see this one hasn't been clean. It's been lightly used, but you can see the residue inside, the tars that come off the cannabis as it's burning. The smoke leaves some sometimes some particles of cannabis in there. You can't, I don't know if you can see it, but some raw cannabis, if it happens to go through the process without getting fully burned, will end up in this water. So that's why you hear tonight all the veterans talking about cleanliness of your smoking device. Very important to clean it And the way I do that, there's plenty of things on the market that are probably way more effective. Citric, they use a citric cleaner for water pipes and bongs. It's very, very popular. It's been around for a decade or so or something. But the poor man Cajun method is isopropyl alcohol, 91%, and then kosher coarse salt. And the way you do that is you don't need a lot of alcohol, just a little bit. And you just pour the salt down the throat of the water pipe and swish it around. Yes. And the coarse salt acts as a scrubbing agent. The alcohol dissolves the residue in there, and the salt kind of washes the inside of it out. There's, you can always use a little cleaner, like on this particular pipe, there's some dimples that go inside the glass. So you want to use something to clean through that area, probably for sure. And then
now, those dimples are actually for ice. So you can put ice, so the ice will actually stay in the top. So it's a way to cool off the smoke.
To cool the smoke, which is another reason why I like a water pipe, because it filters that some of the particles that you might get when you're using just a regular pipe or a joint. You bypassing the paper from the joint, and to me it's a little more cleaner. And so in this little deal here, what happens is, as you're inhaling, you put the product in here. Well, we could say weed or cannabis. I like saying cannabis. This is it's called a glass filter. It's just a little tiny piece of glass. Because if you don't have what happens when you ground the cannabis up, some of it's going to fall through that hole without getting burnt, and you actually wasting it. Before I got that little filter, I'd see a lot of particles floating in here that were green. So they hadn't even made it through the burning process, so it was wasting a lot of medicine. So you put this little glass bead, drop it down inside there, and then you put it's always best to grind the cannabis, because like Nate said, you want the air to get all around the bud or the particles, so it fully burn. If you have just a piece of a bud, sometimes, which I do it sometime in a pinch, if I don't feel like grinding, I'll break a piece of this off, this bud, just a small piece, and then I'll drop it in the pipe, and then you use a Bic lighter. And I'm not going to do it in here because I'm renting my house, and I have a non-smoking policy in the house, so not a good thing to do when you live Facebook. But that's the water pipe. And what I do here is just take it over to the sink after I swish it around, and just rinse it out with water. Rinse the alcohol off out with water, and it's good to go. And like Al mentioned, I always start with a clean pipe in the morning. Every time I use it, every day it gets washed and cleaned, because it'll affect the taste of the terpenes, and might make you cough more, because this piece, once you get a lot of residue, you reburn it. So I love starting with a fresh pipe anytime I consume cannabis. So I think that pretty much covers it. So thank y'all again. Happy Veterans Day to all of you.
Do you also have a vaporizer pen, Noah, or?
I do. It's not handy right now, but a dry herb, what as Can makes a little $30 pen that you fill it with product, and it's better for when you're smoking out in public. Louisiana, fortunately, we can smoke out in public. Anywhere you can smoke a cigarette outdoors, you can consume cannabis. Now, when I was living in Arizona, it was different, totally different. You couldn't consume cannabis in the parks or on the sidewalks or anything like that. So, fortunate to be down here, that if I'm out and about hurrying or something, out of festival or something, I don't have to worry about trying to find a place to medicate. I can just medicate at ease. So.
Well, thank you very much, Councilmember Tony Landry, and a happy Veterans Day to you too, sir.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Camelford Lifestyle Shop, open Monday to Friday from 10 till 7 p.m. or by chance. Check out our flags, our t-shirts, plus our hats, and look of that supply of rolling papers, plus much more. We've got bongs and your favorite herbal vaporizers. Look at all the incense we have, as well as for those who collect knives, check out these knives in our collection. And while you're here, stop in to see Shay at the piercing room, where you can get poked by Shay. Daily deals, check them out. Camelford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Camelford, Ontario.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
Re-rolled Saturdays. Check it out. Nothing but non-stop cannabis and psychedelic programming. Find it at 420pace.ca.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Next up, we have Council Member Wade Laughter. Wade will explain how he makes his edibles and tinctures from his own plants. And we'll also talk about the different ratios of THC and CBD, etc., and why they matter to you. So thank you very much for joining us, Council Member Wade. And we look forward to hearing from you tonight, sir. Happy Veterans Day to you, sir.
Thank you. And my apologies for being late. We had a power outage here this afternoon. One of the things I've realized is I'm very fortunate to live in California, and here in our local jurisdiction, we have an excellent dispensary where I can access all kinds of product. And many of those products here in Nevada County are available through a donation program for qualified patients like myself. But that's a luxury many people don't have. And so I'll come back to what might be available in a dispensary near you and talk about how to, if you can grow a cannabis plant, how you can make products that you might find in a dispensary, but make them for yourself. And one of the beauties of this for me is if you're using cannabis for some benefit, in addition to its ability to get you stoned, to use a colloquial term for it, I call it psychoactivity. But in my work over the years with cannabis, I've met many people who came to find me because they were interested in cannabis that might help some condition they had, but wouldn't get them stoned. And there is cannabis like that. The most extreme version of it is referred to as hemp. But there's cannabis that has CBD and THC together, and you can find seeds of it. I won't name names. I don't like to endorse commercial products. I just, yeah, there are seeds out there that have CBD and THC together. And to Michael Crowditz's point earlier in the conversation, a lot of the cannabis that was coming into the United States in the 70s, when I was first trying it in the late 60s and early 70s, it had THC and CBD as likely other cannabinoids. And there's so many cannabinoids other than THC and CBD in the cannabis plant. So if you grow your own plant, if you can do that, then you know what's on that plant, there's no contaminants ideally. And if you can grow tomatoes, you can grow a cannabis plant. Once you've harvested the cannabis plant, there's all kinds of things you can do. And the real trick to me is one of the ways to get the benefit from the cannabis plant has been discussed at length here today, which is to burn or vaporize and inhale the chemistry that the cannabis plant makes. But what's also true is the cannabis plant, most of that chemistry is in glandular trichomes, little crystalline structures on the leaves and flowers of the plant that can be broken off by mechanical separation with ice water and or dry sieving. And you can, I'll just say that in all of the extractions that you would want to do, you want to keep your cannabis as cold as possible. And ideally the workspace is cold and your tools are cold, because when cannabis trichomes are cold, they're brittle. They break off easily and they're easy to capture. So if you have the opportunity to grow cannabis and can do extractions of that sort, you can make hash, you can press it into rosin, you can press the flowers into rosin. All of these, we could talk for hours about the details and specifics of different types of extractions, but the key points to me are, if you can grow your own plants, you can make your own medical products. And one of the key points that I want to make, if you make something that you're ingesting, and by that I mean you're putting it in your mouth and swallowing it, start with a very small portion of what you've made and wait for a few hours to see what the effects are on your body. And if you like the effects, you can duplicate that dose going forward. If you didn't get the effects you wanted, you can then consider increasing the dose. But ingestion takes anywhere from an hour to 4 hours for the full effects to come on. And then you can get that situation that Michael was speaking of having too much, which again, won't kill you, but it's not pleasant. Even someone like myself who loves the intoxicating effects of THC, too much is no fun. The other thing I wanted to say, Nate, you did a beautiful presentation on making edibles, so I won't really go into it. You were using butter as your solvent, if you will, to dissolve those crystalline structures off the plant surfaces and into your butter. You can also use a food grade oil like sesame oil or olive oil and make a very lovely preparation, keeping it at low temperatures. And that brings me to one place I wanted to disagree with you. And I will say that you happen to state what virtually every manufacturer of cannabis products does and says: decarboxylate your cannabis before you make a cannabis product. And I say, don't. Try preserving the acid forms of THC and CBD and those other cannabinoids. You'll preserve some of the more volatile terpenes in your preparation that way. And you might find that you can enjoy a larger dose of the product you've made because the THC is not psychoactive when it's still in the acid form. And I personally use cannabis a lot. I initially came to it as a result of glaucoma, a diagnosis I got back in the mid-90s. All the ophthalmological preparations for glaucoma made me ill. At one point, it put me in the hospital. And then we figured out that it was the eye drops. And long story short, cannabis reduces ocular pressure, which allows me to still be able to see today, 20 some years later, without having to use eye drops. And then about a year ago, I discovered that I have a kind of cancer called multiple myeloma, which is a cancer of the bone marrow and is quite unpleasant in the pain category because I have, to quote my doctor's records, innumerable lytic fractures throughout my spine, rib cage, hips, outer extremities, jaw, and skull. So I got a constant sort of buzz going from my body. And what I have found is that a mix of CBD and THC, I inhale my cannabis because I enjoy the psychoactive effects, but I ingest a larger amount of milligrams of cannabinoids every day because it works really well at mitigating my pain. I'm able to function. I continue to have good appetite. The chemo drugs I'm on, they're not great. I don't claim that cancer has facilitated my rapid recovery from what at one point in December appeared life-threatening to my doctors. But I am in good health today. My blood work seems good. And yeah, I'm not using, I've used 5 doses of opioids in the last month, and I'm having good quality of life. And so I'll stop there. That was long-winded, but again, explore the other cannabinoids that are available. And if you can, make your own. Oh no, I got one more thing I want to do, Etienne. You okay with that? Thank you. If you have access to a dispensary, a good friend of mine does these line of products. This is a syringe that a 1 gram syringe. It has 728 milligrams CBD, 55 milligrams THC. Decarboxylated. I've argued with him too, Nate. Like I said, everybody decarboxylates except me. And there's a few other folks that are doing acid. You can find acid products out there. It's starting to gain traction. But here's another tincture, another RSO, this would be colloquially referred to. We got 28 milligrams CBD and 760 milligrams THC. And there's 37 milligrams CBG. And I have access to CBG as well, and it's helpful for cancer and inflammation. And what I do is I'll take an empty bottle of a tincture and put some sesame oil or some olive oil in it. I'll put it in a water bath on the stove. The water, once it comes to a boil, you can turn it down really low. Now you're warming the oil, your carrier oil, in your tincture bottle. You drop the syringe into the water, drop them both into the water, and then you can custom blend. The markings on the syringe allow you to take 10% of what's in the whole gram, and depending on how many percent of each syringe you add, you end up making a custom product that gives you what you want. And by using both of these, I can get, do some quick math here, 1,500 milligrams more or less of each in a 1 ounce bottle. So a dropper full like this would have 30 milligrams CBD, 30 milligrams THC in 1 milliliter, which is a nice dose. And I would say for most users, you might start with a few drops if you were able to make a tincture that strong for yourself. Myself, I would probably take 1 whole dropper full 4 or 5 times a day because it's really great at keeping my appetite going, keeping my energy and focus going, keeping my pain levels at a very manageable level. And again, I have access to time relief morphine and oxycodone and all kinds of crap, and I don't want any of it. I don't like how it works in my body. Cannabis helps me with my quality of life, and I am so fucking grateful. Pardon my language, but I really am grateful. Thank you for the pulpit.
Amen.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, you can curse around us. We don't mind. All right. Well, thank you all very much. I'm going to kind of go into, let's see, I want to brighten up my room a little bit here. So
When he's mumbling, just let me remind everybody that's listening that when Wade was talking about ingesting that liquid, it's not psychoactive because it has not been heated. You can only get a psychoactive effect out of the cannabis plant if it's heated. So anything that's eaten before that process will not have any kind of negative effect, whatever you think negative may be. So that's why he can function. It's not a problem. It's a medicine. It's a food. It's everything he needs.
Right on. All right. Well,
I
go ahead,
gotta
Wade.
add to what Al was saying. Thank you, Al. That's a great observation. One of the reasons I'm really enthused about the idea of not decarboxylating your cannabis if you're making a cannabis product is it allows your consumer to start exploring what other benefits cannabis can give in addition to that beautiful effect of psychoactivity. Because there's all kinds of other things it does in our body. It's just psychoactivity is the one that's most obvious and easiest to see, experience, and for many people limits how much of it you can use. Boom, that's all I got. Thank you.
All right. Well, I am going to go into a sort of a masterclass of some of the more newer products that are available on the market. One specifically, this one's been around for about 20 years in different iterations as a vaporizer, but the Volcano, as it's known and loved around the world, made by Storks and Bickel. It was originally German. Now I think an American company has purchased them. This is a hybrid model. So this is the vaporizer itself. It has a temperature setting. So I use Fahrenheit as opposed to our friend Nate was using Celsius earlier. So I'm using about 330 degrees here. And so this is a device in Europe. They have also known as the Medic model. It has a multiple piece system. It has basically this chamber here, which will receive your cannabis, of which I have pre-ground. And if you do have ground and things like that, I recommend things like a Boost from Integra to keep your humidity as well as keep your cannabis and such in a refrigerator. I literally have a small refrigerator in my room here that I keep all of my cannabis and concentrates in. So I'm going to take a nice little pinch, put it into this chamber here, right? That's what it looks like. This now interlocks, and then you twist it, and now it is attached together. So as I will put this away so I don't humanize myself, this is the bag. So the bag has a tip. This tip basically goes in and out. This uses a turkey basting bag, which also does not off-gas anything. So this basically intercedes into here. So that is now set. The older Volcano model used to actually just kind of rest on top of the Volcano itself, whereas this one seats, and then with a slight twist, it's now completely attached to this, right? So from here, since it's at the right temperature, basically you're going to watch this rise in front of me. So this is basically pumping in hot air at approximately 330 degrees Fahrenheit. It's running it over the flower, and it's taking all that crystalline matter that we were talking about, and it's turning it into a vapor. And the key thing about this is it's much healthier, as Nate was saying, and if you're a runner, etc., the best thing is that you're not igniting the vegetable matter. You're just getting what you need. So as you see, this kind of swells up. You turn it off. Then you take this, you disengage, put the Volcano aside, and then you take that filter, and from that filter, just insert. And so when I press against, it inhales. And when I do so, as you can see, well, you guess really can't. A little bit of vapor comes out. And so that is basically a volcano vaporizer. The key thing, as he also stated as well, it comes with this little brush, which you need to use to clean. And it is best to clean it while it is warm. Do not wait till it's cold. You know, the more that you handle these products, the more desensitized you get to the fear of the heat, etc. Again, it's just the more you do it, the more you familiarize yourself with it. And then below, because Nate also showed the same thing, Storks and Bickel makes his Mighty, but they also make this Crafty, which I use on my walks. And so this uses, it has the same componentry, except these uses little pods. And you take these pods and you basically fill them with cannabis. They're basically two-piece setup. They come apart. And this one, as you see, it has cannabis inside of it. And this little pod then goes in, screws, and then I turn it on, and within a minute, it's going to vibrate and let me know that I have that. So this is what I use for vaporizing on my walks when I want to go out if I don't want to smoke a joint. So one of the things that I got turned on to by my patients about a decade ago, 2011, 2012, we started to have this product called V.A.C, which is a concentrate of cannabis, come to us. And I started to watch a lot of my older patients spend a lot of money on a little bit of product. And I got really curious about why were they spending that on that as opposed to flower and others. Well, these tended to be higher paying patients. And there's various types of products nowadays, from different types of rosins, which is heat pressing cannabis and extracting it, to BHO's butane hash oil, which is a way of extracting by using the same method that they decaffeinate coffee. They take butane and they run it over it, and it pulls off the essential oils into a pool. And so if you buy coffee concentrate, that's how coffee concentrate is made. So from that's the same method that was again created a decade plus ago. And that method has spawned different types of ingestions modalities around it, because early on the only way to use it was to attempt to, you know, drip it onto a joint or dip paper in it and try to get the paper in it and then roll it. We would go to coals where we would buy this particular hot coals, light them until they turned white, then scrape it off and then drop this oil on it. Back in the day, people would use hot knives where they would take their butter knives and insert the tips just into the spiral of the electric stoves and use that to literally heat the knife till it was red hot. And then they would take old school hash like Afghani hash and other hash oil and tap the two together and then use the lid or the top part of a bottle to inhale the vapors that came off of such things. A decade ago, people started created what's called electronic nails. And so I'm going to go through a few here with you, which this is, I want to thank D-Nail and Brian and the whole crew there. I've supported them for a decade, and they've been very generous and helpful to us here at the Veterans Action Council. So this may look alien to some people, this may not. So this is basically a solid iteration of what's called an electronic nail. This is basically wired to a box that produces a temperature between, 300 to 700 degrees, depending on what you want. And so it uses this in between is the element, right? That's tied to the wire there. So this heating element itself causes the heat. Here is a diffuser that is made out of crystal so that the heat that draws down, it basically goes into this. and these slats also diffuse heat. This top inside here is titanium, and this outside here is silicon carbide, which is a high grade ceramic that will not off gas, the same with titanium. This inside here is titanium. And of course, now this is what it is. So this would usually seat into a bong back in the day. The problem is this still gets hot. It also gets oily and drips. So I recommend using something like this, which is a PTFE adapter. So this is, again, it's a non-off-gassing plastic that allows for goo, which hash oil, when it's the byproduct, when you use it, actually becomes quite gooey and quite not easy to handle. So I'm going to go over cleaning after that. And what this is in is what's called a drop down. So a drop down is also a newer piece of equipment, so that this will now seat into your bong, so that, so take this one apart for a second. So this seats in your bong so that over here, so that the heat is caught over here. It doesn't come over here into your pipe, because heat and reuse causes problems, etc. So you want to be aware and be wary of that. So anywhere, if you have the availability to put PTFE, especially where your heat is, the better it is for when it's cooler or when you have to clean it later. The problem is that the resin, as it cools and hardens, will literally turn almost to a sort of stone unless it is heated to the temperature it is used at. So then it is flexible to move, etc. Usually when it's cold, it's fixated in place. So that's why we recommend using PTFE, so you can remove this to clean it. And cleaning it is important. This is one particular cleaner I love. It's called Grunge Off. It's a super soaker. It's what Nate talked about earlier. It's a very concentrated orange cleaner that when you open it, boy, you can smell it is very, very orange, but it's a concentrate. So the key thing about this is, when this is cool, you want to put this into a little Tupperware that's glass, and then you put this in and you pour this on top of it. Now, when you're done with it, you take a funnel and a filter, coffee filter, and then you pour that liquid that you used to soak this in back into your bottle. It's reusable, so that's why you use the coffee filter to filter out all the bad stuff, but put the concentrate cleaner back in. This way, this stuff is not cheap. It's like $18 for a bottle. And that's if you look on, again, eBay, they've got it in, it's a lot cheaper than going to your head shop. They'll charge you 20 to 30 bucks at a head shop for this stuff. So I highly recommend, again, going to eBay or buying in bulker, because I will usually keep a 6-pack on hand this is great also for traveling to clean your pipe. You can travel with your pipe as long as it's clean, and it has to be crystal clean. So, when Tony talks about using alcohol and salt, after you use the alcohol and salt, then I recommend a little couple of drops of this, then shake it up. It'll remove the alcohol residue and any flavors, all that. This is to soak your bong in. This stuff in concentrate is some of the best stuff on the market. There's different manufacturers. This is just one particular. The key thing is that these components, because they gum up and goo up quite considerably, it is best to soak them. So again, these are considered a manual, pardon me, this is an e-nail setup. Again, this is just a simple pipe in protecting, and the concentrate then goes on to, these are titanium tools. Okay. This is also, the bottom is also a stopper, which is a cap, and it actually has directional holes on it. This is one of the most ingenious little ideas, again, by D-Nail. And of course, this this type of spatula top is great for dealing with everything from crumble to rosins to any types of hashes. And then you take this and then you use this and then inhale. And then you use this to trap the smoke and continue to inhale until it's all gone. When it is done, you take a Q-tip and then you use that Q-tip and you go in and you clean the inside of that pipe for any residual oil so that this stays clean at all times. It is very important. If you want to, these concentrates are made with love and care. So you want to treat your pipe with love and care, keep it clean it every day. I actually do so by having 2 of the same pipe in the same setup. So one day one is soaking, the next day the other is available to me. More recently, in the last 5 years, they have come out with what's called an e-banger. This is what's called a banger. This is goes to the days of using a torch. This is a butane torch, Blazer 8000 modified with a guard that keeps my skin from getting burned and a one-handed handle, which I also have a weight on the bottom, so everything sets right. This is a refillable, as you see on the bottom. You just take butane, you put it into there. You do that in the upside down mode until it starts spitting out at you. And then again, this is a one-handed control. There it is. That is 1200 degrees. Do not mess around. You will burn your ass and anything else. So this is an e-banger. So they have taken that idea where you would take the torch and burn around here. They now have a coil. And so this heated coil now uses a little rubber piece with a magnet. Okay. And then that then seats into your pipe. Okay. So now that is a very simplistic, you can put what's called little terp balls, which are small spherical balls that go in here. And then again, the same thing when you apply your hash, because your temperature is already preset to the temperature here, right? So it's ready to use at any time that it's on. You take the hash, you put it into here, it melts and starts to vaporize. And then this has a cap that goes on top that's also made out of glass. Inhale and done. So these are, this is available again via a D-nail. This is a Puke and Beagle actual glass banger on that, to be specific. And then the more newer manual type of vaporizing. This is a newer nail. This is what's called a hybrid nail. It's a 14 millimeter, goes into the 14 millimeter. This is from Victory Glass Works, and with an inside little piece of crystal glass, which is what's going to happen is I take this torch, I would heat now the outside of this entire piece of this cylinder, okay? And that'll start around 800 degrees Fahrenheit when it is fully heated. It can turn cherry red. This right here is what's called a dabrite. So this is a temperature controller. So what this does, I have right next to me on my armrest, this sits, and then I have a little cup holder where this sits right next to it. So you basically, you line that blue little light literally at the column that is what you're using that temperature gauge on. And so I'm using this, I heat it up. I'll demonstrate. Gonna get loud for a second. So it's like a little jet engine. Blazer is a company out of Japan, and they have mastered these little torches. I've had these torches, the smaller ones used for cigars, for over 25 years. I bought it at Arnold Schwarzenegger's cigar shop back in Santa Monica, and I still have it, and it still works. So again, you can go buy cheap stuff all you want, but this is high quality. So again, I'm heating this in a circular motion around. Let me take the lid off. Sorry. That should actually be about it. Okay. And so what's happening is this is heating up on the outside of the glass. Also, that little piece of glass on the inside is going to act as a resistor in the sense that the base of this cylinder has these little notches. And so here I'm going to put it against my temperature, and it's going to go off at approximately 625 degrees. So that's the great thing about this temperature gauge is you just literally set it and forget it. So I heat up my torch. I now set it right here, and I let it, basically it's cooling off. And when it hits that right temperature, this is going to sound an alarm. And so I already have a preset dab for myself, which is, again, a titanium tool, which gives no off-gassing. This is a Happy Daddy products. I'm not sure if they're still around, but some of these companies have come and gone. But this is a great little fork design. So this is great for types of waxes. And then as we get down here, what's going to happen is, well, temperature goes, you can hear the, oh, missed it. So now I cap it. I will then take the oil and apply it to the outside, and you see it melts and it falls. So what's happening is it's condensing at the bottom now. So when I inhale, that glass piece on the inside is now rotating and pulling up the film of the oil as I inhale, thinning out the oil and pressing it against the heat and causing it to vaporize. So again, there's no off-gassing. It's just straight hash experience without any secondary off-gassing. So yeah, it's a glob. I can handle a glob. Not for the inexperienced. Now that I'm done with that, I remove this. There's an actual cap holder that sits in your little dab right. So you just, put that in there. And now, again, here you are with your Q-tip. You will take that Q-tip, being very careful to keep your fingertips at the bottom, and you will plunge it in, and you will spin it around. And you're trying to absorb any secondary oils that were not inhaled. You can also use that and plunge that area too. You can also then dip it again in water and then go back again. I like one dry and then one wet. Best thing to do is also for that little piece, kind of trap it in the hole there and then pick it out. Again, little tricks. See, still a little bit of stuff that was left in there. And so now it's ready to reheat and go again. So here is one that gets dirty. My other one I wanted to show you. So again, even after days use, that type of oil is a residual from that, so it needs to be cleaned. Again, because as you see, just one day, that water goes from clear to cloudy. See, in just one day. So there's a real difference in why you need to, keep your pipes clean. So there's an example. And there I will then take, again, using this grunge off, pour out the water. I don't want to water down, right? And I will pour my concentrate in there. They make glass plugs. So there's a glass plug that I put in here that seats. So I pull this out, put in the plug, and I can pour the cleaner all the way up to here in it and let it soak. And then again, pour it back into a filter, a coffee filter, and then back into my bottle and reuse that. So there is a very over explained how to dab from an e-nail perspective, as well as from a manual perspective, which this is considered manual. And of course, you don't have to use butane. You can use propane. You can also use heat guns. Before the volcano, we were using heat guns. And something like the Steinel has a ceramic core. So again, it's safe to inhale as opposed to some of the older models have asbestos. So be careful of what you're, the machinery that you're utilizing. So those are different methods and methodologies. Again, you can use the hot air gun. You're shooting it around here. Down here doesn't matter as much. And then the temperature gauge is shooting directly at here. So it's understanding where the oil is going and how you're applying it. So there's a bit of physics involved there. And there's this has evolved from, it was, it gets rather complicated how the different methods used to be. It used to be a swing arm that was titanium that they would use the swing arm to come up, which is really one of the first ones. And then the e-nails, and most recently, these hybrid nails that are available that are, again, considered bangers. Most head shops have different iterations and variations of these. Ask them the grade of quartz that they are. The higher grade of quartz, the better and easier it is to clean. And you can actually use the heat of these torches to clean the pipe and use to clean the hash on it, because it will not only burn it off, it'll heat it up and turn red and will cause it to literally disappear. So there is no scarring or scarification or any residual on here. Even the stuff on the bottom, if I applied it, the heat directly to the bottom, will all completely disappear and ash off and is able to be wiped off or blown out. Okay, so that's my breakdown of dabbing and the volcano. And thank you very much for all of your patience. We have one more breakdown. I think Councilmember Lenora Valles is going to join us and talk about her edibles and how she makes them. So welcome, Councilmember. How are you doing?
Hello. Nice to see you guys.
Right on. Well, it's show and tell time. What you got?
Okay, so I'm gonna walk the camera over here a little bit. Sorry, forgot about that. What I have over here is how to decarboxylate your cannabis. And all I have right here is a cookie sheet and some parchment paper and some cannabis. And a lot of people will ground up their cannabis, but you really don't want that in your cannabis butter or oil, little segments. You want to be able to get it out with a cheesecloth or something. But I make cannabis butter all the time. This is the cheesecloth. God, I hope I'm not making you dizzy. And these are kind of like my edibles right there. Oh, I should have practiced this. I'm so sorry. And I also have my titanium e-nail set up right here. And I think this is easier. I put it on a regular pipe, and it's just, this is the apparatus, this little hot little button there. But I love my titanium email because it automatically keeps it hot, and it will also, let me bring you back here. It'll also shut off if not in use for a period of time. God, I'm sorry. Okay, so yeah, it'll shut off too because it has that kind of fail safe on it, but it's an e-nail. And I just hook it up to, because it comes with a nail, and I just hook it up to my water pipe and use it like that. And yeah, you have to be really careful what kind of water pipe you use because you don't want to overheat that pipe either. But this is, let me show you what cannabis butter looks like for you who haven't used it or messed with it. Let me see. So this is cannabis butter. I make it from regular butter. This is what it ended up looking like. And my father puts this on his toast in the morning. If he's in pain and he has a hard time getting up, he just puts some on some toast, or he'll even just eat it straight. But he loves it. I make it just with regular butter. I make it in my crock pot, or I can use a little double boiler system on my stove. But this is what I make for him every couple of weeks. And he uses it at night on toast, and again in the morning at toast if he's not feeling well. And I also make these little cannabis treats. I like making Rice Krispie treats. They're the easiest way to medicate something, and it lasts so long. I can keep these in the refrigerator forever. And I make them fresh, and they're so soft. You'd be surprised. We're having a medical conference here in a few days.
How much, I have a question. How much butter do you put in your recipe for, say, as how many of those Rice Krispie treats, so people get an understanding about how much butter they need to make something like that?
Well, if you're making a batch of regular Rice Krispie treats, you're just following the regular recipe for Rice Krispie treats. And all Rice Krispie treats require butter. So you're just replacing cannabis butter with the butter. But, one stick of butter is like one cup of butter. And you could make, we're talking 80 pieces of cannabis treats, just little pieces like this, like I do. And this is, I can't tell you the serving of THC in this, but I don't let my cannabis butter boil ever, even in the crock pot. And I decarboxylate it in the oven at a very low temperature for about 35 minutes, about 245. And these are very potent. So we're having a conference coming up soon. So we're gonna have to keep ourselves medicated while we're working, because, smoking is frowned upon in that industry while you're doing that kind of education. So I suggest eating it. And I know you don't want to really have it laced in sugar, but again, my dad just puts it on his toast in the morning. And it works, it kicks in. I suggest that when you do eat it edible, you eat it on an empty stomach. You don't eat an edible after you've had a full course meal, because you won't feel it for a very long time, if any. You want it to go to your system first before you eat. You want it to have a clear passage. But that's what I have to offer. And just to remind patients that, the medicine in cannabis is not smoking it, it's actually ingesting it. Smoking it is more of a it helps me with my PTSD, and it helps a little bit with pain. But, if you have MS or cancer, you should be ingesting your cannabis. You should be taking your stalk, stems, and leaves and putting them in your smoothies in the morning. Very important. So thank you for this time and moment. But it's good to be here and to see you all.
And as well to see you. Again, you can use coconut oil. You can use different methods. I was told stories how a lot of the farm workers would take tequila and take cannabis, and on full moon to full moon, they'd stuff it with cannabis. And then on the next full moon, they would take that alcohol, that tequila, and rub it on their knees and on their ankles and on their hips so that they could, work in the fields. So, it's not uncommon. A very common method we haven't talked about is carts. These are available in almost all states. This is a PAX pod. This is a pre-filled pod that goes into this. This is charged to USB-C on the bottom, USB. This is one of the most common ones. This is called a 510. And that's because this is called a 5-10 threading. Okay, so that's why if people are talking 5-10s, they're talking these cards. So this one on the left is Cold Fire. And then, so this is a flavored distillate, BHO. This is Blue River Terps. So this is actually rosin, which is pressed, and they use the terpenes that they've extracted as the solvent, so it is actually pliable to actual use, etc., as opposed to this is its old extraction. The older methods used to use unsavory types of solvents, or I can't think of the names of them. And then you've also got things like this, which is magnetic, which actually just snaps into place and you inhale and it vibrates as well. These are become unfortunately, the future roaches of our generation. They are amazing convenience. The problem is, with amazing convenience comes great problems. These are only made in 2 factories in China, these batteries. That's a problem. Yes, they're USB. I recommend, if you have to use these, make sure that you use one. And as you see, this does not have any center hole in it. You do not want to use these that have a hole in the center. If they have a hole in the center, you're inhaling the battery off gas and the amalgam and the solder and all that's inhaled when you actually do these. Not sure if people are aware, but if you tap these things 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they turn off. You tap it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it turns back on. So these are always a 5-point turn on, turn off, and it's always best to turn them off when you're going into your pocket, etc., so they don't actually hit, discharge, or overheat, etc. These are amazingly convenient. People use these all the time to travel. They smell like normal things, so they don't stink like cannabis. But I also, if you are and happen to be around people, this is where I recommend that smaller smoke buddy for, again, for, see, that's it. Nothing when you burn through one of these. So again, different methods, different modalities, different availabilities. And if you travel with these, put them in your carry-on. Do not check any of these batteries or types of batteries into luggage that's going under the airplane. Period. End of story. Same thing for the packs as well. So that was a method that we nobody had touched on, so I wanted to make sure it was covered. Council Member Laughter.
Yes, it occurs to me to mention that one of the other type of products that are available into some dispensaries and can be made at home are topicals, where you can make a cream or a salve that incorporates cannabis oils into that cream. And particularly if you pay attention to the ingredients that are used in the salve, if they're all there to promote absorption into the skin, we have found that that's a very effective way of working with a lot of skin conditions as well as pain, particularly in the periphery, the limbs and whatnot. Just an observation. One of the things that I look for in a topical, if I don't have access to the ones we make here at home, if it has beeswax in it, it's probably not going to absorb very well into your skin, because our skin does not absorb beeswax. It's wonderful for creating structure and holding structure in a cream or a salve, but not very, again, everything in a cream or a salve for cannabis topical use should be about absorption into the skin. There's also patches and sprays, and some of them work quite well. I don't have much experience with them. The other thing that someone pointed out too is suppositories. Yeah, there's a lot of interest and at least some feedback I've gotten, some good results for vaginal and anal suppositories for certain conditions of the reproductive organs and or the lower colon. I'll just leave it at that, and always work with your doctor for conditions like that. Thank you.
There you go. Okay, thank you very much, Wade. Council Member Velez, and then Landau.
Sorry, I want to kind of try to redeem myself a little bit. Like I said, I was showing you the e-nail from before. This is kind of what it looks like. And this part is a metal part that goes in your bong.
That's
And I
titanium.
can't get it off right now. It's kind of stuck. But this is just, just this metal part. So you can make any kind of bong your dab rig. And you don't have to torch it because this thing automatically heats up to 518 degrees. You plug it in. It has a fail safe. Let me turn it. Oh, I can't turn it on. I don't have to plug in, but you just push this little green button in the middle, hold it for like 4 seconds, and it turns on. It takes like 2 seconds for it to heat up to 518 degrees. It's incredibly fast. But it's called a mini e-nail. And I love this. We were lobbying for the Nevada legislature for a medical marijuana program back in 2008. And one of the lobbyists, Joe Bresney, came in and we were showing them how we did dabs. And he brought in, at the time they had these because we were using those, the nurses, we always use these and pack these wherever we went. But he actually brought in a big gas, the stuff they use in automotive, places. It was a big fire torch, and he was fire torching the dab rig, and we had the council members, we had Metro Police Department there. And, they just were so turned off with the torch thing. And because we were showing them the different ways that cannabis is consumed by patients. And we didn't think about it. We should have brought our little thing in, but it would have made such a big difference because it was so civilized and we weren't bringing in this huge torch and, made it look a little cracky, if you will. But yeah, these are super safe, especially for those people who don't want to have torches or use torches. So we recommend these to medical marijuana patients all the time. So I love to see these when they sell these in smoke shops and dispensaries and push them on people. How are you smoking your cannabis? All the dispensary, bud tenders always ask me, what do you want? You want a peppy high, or you want a downer bud, or how about asking me, how am I smoking my pot? Are you getting enough from it, or you find yourself going through a lot of pot? Are you getting a good hit from it? And dabbing is so much better than smoking it because it's less smoke, it's less destruction on your lungs, and it's a more concentrated hit, so it lasts much longer. So if you have a spouse who complains that you're smoking too much, a dab rig is it. It is like the civilized way to do it, if you will. But yeah, I just wanted to add this, and I did buy this little other dab rig. You do use a torch to heat this little piece up. And, you can still use your torch and dab like this if you don't want to spring for this. This mini e-nail was about $200, and I bought it at a smoke shop. So, but normally you would buy this from distributors, and places like dispensaries and smoke shops would sell them. Well, I'd love to see them more in smoke shops, because the only thing I see in smoke shops and dispensary is water bongs, and a lot of these things, but very few of these e-nails. And it would be nice to see more of that. But yeah, that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Lenora. Nate.
Two just factors I forgot. I love all your things, ATN, but if you are caught with not a lot of Without those products, if you want to conceal your smoke, you take the inside of a either paper towel or toilet paper, the cardboard, and you put a dryer sheet in, and that's the cheap way to do it. And when you ingest cannabis through your digestive system and it goes through your liver, it actually chemically alters the cannabis, and it goes from THC9 to THC11.
Electrohydroxy metabolite is actually what it turns into, which is a psychedelic. And so that's why people can go from very uncomfortable to holy shit very quickly. We'll go to Council Member Al Byrne to close this out.
Well, I learned a lot. I'll tell you, I hope everybody else does. But I just want to point out to the audience that while we're talking about the use of cannabis for human beings, that's us, cannabis is also, necessary for all other life on Earth. While we were talking, two things happened. I used a topical on my wrists because they were hurting. And so I grabbed a little of this stuff and I rubbed it on, and the pain has been gone now for an hour or so. It won't come back for 3 or 4. And the other thing I did is I took a break and I let my dogs out. They came back in and I gave each of them a cracker with some cannabis butter on it. Looked exactly like yours, Lenora. Now they are resting comfortably. One has just had an operation, but the butter helps with, doesn't seem to be as, the stitches aren't bothering them as much. And in just a few minutes, they'll go to sleep for about 10 hours. And so again, when you think about your own health, you want to think about not only ingesting psychoactively, but like Wade does, he doesn't use it for psychoactive, he uses it for nourishment and for helping his immune system and his ECS. And so we have this ECS, this endocannabinoid system. And my dog has it, and your cat has it, and the American eagle has it. It's everywhere except in insects. And so this food source that Wade is talking about is also good for your horse and your dog. So when you're thinking about all these things, don't forget them. I know most of you have a pet in your family, right there somewhere in the room with you probably. And don't forget about them. They can use this stuff too.
And I'll credit my friend Todd McCormick with this one. You can also take your hemp seed oil, put it into capsules with keef, your fresh sifted, cannabis, fresh frozen or ready, and put it in capsule form and can ingest it that way. So there is the plant with the plant. So don't forget about your hemp seed oil, ladies and gentlemen. So I will leave you with that. And I want to thank all of our council members who came out tonight for sharing this experience with us. I want to thank Dale, Al Byrne, Michael Crowitz, Nate Landau, George Armstrong. Thank you, Gage, Lenora Valles, Wade Laughter, Tony Landry, Michael Green, Michael Crowitz, who had to jump off. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Happy Veterans Day to you all. We hope this has been enlightening to you as it was to us. And enjoy the rest of your Veterans Day. And we'll see you in a couple weeks for a Roundtable number 47. But this has been V.A.C. Roundtable number 46. Oh, thanks again, George. It's our forms of cannabis ingestion. So thank you, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.
Happy Veterans Day.
The Veterans Action Council is a Pace Radio Network content provider.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.